It has been a week since the Nintendo Switch Lite had a global launch, and it's taken some gamers by surprise, as I'm seeing a lot of people either really enjoying the Nintendo Switch Lite or really taking a strong dislike to this brand new handheld in the Nintendo family. I'm here to talk to you guys about some of my experiences I've had with this device over the last week, and I'm going to compile a list of pros and cons, and together we're going to form some conclusions to ask, is the Nintendo Switch Lite worth it? I'm going to plant this disclaimer right here. I'm going to tell you guys that I'm actually loving my Nintendo Switch Lite, so before you judge me and think I'm going to slate this handheld device throughout the video, I'm not. I'm trying my best to be as objective as possible. So don't comment on this video until you've watched it entirely through, and make some valid arguments in the comment section below as to whether or not you think this is a worthy addition in your gaming collection. So straight off the bat, we're going to start with some pros. This thing looks absolutely stunning, and compared to the original Nintendo Switch, we've got a nice variation of 3 colours compared to the initial kind of dual, just the kind of 2 variants with the neon Joy-Cons and then the kind of matte kind of grey black finish. So I think as a launch product, you're getting a little bit more versatility in terms of its aesthetics. Along that line, I absolutely feel so grateful that there's now a physical D-pad on the Switch Lite compared to the weird mimicking D-pad 4-button kind of combo. I didn't really like that at all, and if I'm brutally honest, when I first got my original Nintendo Switch, I looked at it and I was like, which Joy-Cons which? Because my brain just couldn't distinguish. I had a hard time, and it just didn't feel right rolling your thumb around on some games in handheld mode without an original crusty, beautiful D-pad. So the Switch Lite, in terms of aesthetics for me, is actually better. I love the fact that the Joy-Cons you can't move them, because like I said in my unboxing video, I like to play this, I wanted my Switch, I thought I'd get more use out of it in handheld mode, but for me it just seemed that little bit too flimsy. So if you're after aesthetics, I think the Switch Lite has that slight edge at launch. We also have another colour dropping very shortly with your blue and pink accents in early November. Another thing that I think you really need to consider, if you own a Nintendo Switch, which I do, is it worth getting the Switch Lite? I would probably say objectively no. If you have lots of cash to kind of flash about and you have some spare money and you want to buy a new console, then yes, get the Switch Lite. But if you're a little bit tight, I don't think there's a massive need to upgrade. This is essentially the same technology. There's a few slight tweaks that, you know, compared to what's in the Nintendo Switch. The battery life is slightly better, it looks really sharp, and you're going to get that as well on some games undocked in 720p mode. As we know, this bad boy doesn't dock and runs most games in 720p. Unfortunately, some games won't be able to play, as you do need the motion controls with the Joy-Cons. So one, two switch, whatever it is, I'll put it on screen now. Some games aren't compatible, so you need to ask yourself, which games am I going to play on my Nintendo Switch Lite? Do I need motion controls? Because if the answer is yes, then you're going to want to use original hardware to play those particular games. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of, and I haven't tested this feature myself, so I'm going to refer to Izzy Nobra. I'm going to link his video in the comment section below as a reference point to this next comment. He made a comment that you have to have one Nintendo Switch. So if you have the Lite and you have the original, you have to have one of the consoles as your native console, as your primary console. And what that actually means is that, let's say this is my primary console for my Nintendo Switch, I wouldn't be able to play the same game on both consoles, which seems a little bit crazy. And he was demonstrating that whilst utilising, you know, kind of making this point in his video. So I looked into it a little bit further, and apparently you have to have one switch turned off and the other turned on for the game to run. If you have both switches on, you can't run on your secondary console if this is your primary. That sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but I'll summarize it and make it easy for you. Keep one switch off and have your other switch on. That's all you need to do, essentially. There may be some downloading of saves from the cloud, but I'll be honest with you, that point, as much as it can be a disadvantage, for me, isn't an issue. And the reason is the games I'm playing on my Switch Lite, I am not playing on my original console. And if I do decide to pop, say, you know, The Legend of Zelda into my Switch Lite, I'll start a fresh campaign, because for me, a lot of the games are worth starting from scratch anyway. There's such a strong, like, really amazing lineup of games. You know, and another thing, like the eShop, I'll probably only use it on my Switch Lite. I've never ventured into the eShop on my original Switch. So for me, this is a bonus console because I've got the versatility to kind of start fresh campaigns on this. I'm going to be using this to download some Super Nintendo games, some NES games, and more. What I am really enjoying as well is seeing a lot of other gamers really enjoying their Switch Lites, because I think some people, sorry Izzy, but including yourself, you've been a little bit hard on the Switch Lite, and I know you wanted to get a refund, and EB Games wouldn't give you a refund. And I personally couldn't imagine getting a refund on my Switch Lite. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm probably going to use this a lot more for eShop stuff. I'm going to focus on a lot of digital content with this, whereas my Switch Lite, I know I'm definitely going to utilize it for the hard copies of games that I've got. I'm enjoying starting a new campaign on Octopath Traveler, because that game you can play through with so many different endings, so many different characters to kind of start your adventure with, that it's worth starting again. I don't care about bringing my save off my original console onto my Lite. So in terms of how games look, like I said earlier in this video, they run at a native 720p. There may be some frame rate dips here and there. This channel isn't Digital Foundry though. If you want the absolute spec breakdown, go and check out some of Digital Foundry's tests. They do a fantastic job at showing just how frame rates can dip a little bit. And they did some work on the Link's Awakening game. And apparently when you transition from screen to screen on that game, there's slight frame rate dips. And to me, I don't notice that. So it's an advantage that this thing seems to run games really stable, unless you have quantitative data being spat out on a computer. You're not going to see those dips. You might be the kind of person where you say, oh, you know, I've got a keen eye, I'll notice any frame rate drop, and that's absolutely fine. Again, I think you've got to ask yourself, what do I want a Nintendo Switch Lite for? What use am I going to get out of a Nintendo Switch Lite? I believe I've answered those questions for me personally in this, and to summarise, digital games and brand new games, I'm starting afresh on this bad boy. If you're the kind of person that travels a lot, this is perfect. Again, in my unboxing I said this feels a lot more robust. Obviously with the original Switch, because the Joy-Cons attach, there's a little bit of flexibility where the Joy-Cons kind of slide onto the main Switch itself. With this, obviously you don't have it. And I just love that, because I'm the kind of person that's probably going to drop this. It's probably going to rattle around in my case, which is here, in my bag or my suitcase or whatever. So I want a build that feels that little bit stronger and gives me a little bit more confidence as a gamer to actually use this outside. So in terms of price, another advantage of the Switch Lite is it is considerably cheaper than the base model of the Nintendo Switch. This retails at $199.99 here in the UK. I believe it's the same for the euros, whatever the conversion is. It's probably going to be cheaper to buy it in euros, but nonetheless, this is a much cheaper option. So Christmas is coming up. I think it's a great gift idea. For me personally, I would feel more confident in giving my nephew this to play with rather than my original Switch, because it's very heavy-handed. So if you've got kids in the house, like I said, or you are traveling a lot with kids, and this thing's going to get passed about, for me, it's a win-win situation to just have this rather than my original Switch, which I would be so devastated if it got broke and one of the Joy-Cons got lost. This is a much safer option. So I'd like to think that this has clarified some things for you, and I'd like to think that this video has given more pros than cons. I tried really hard to think of additional things that I don't like about this, but I really don't. In terms of ergonomics, I think it feels really great in the hands. A lot of people say that they prefer to hold a Nintendo 2DS. I disagree. I think this feels fantastic. And what I really love as just a really personal piece of information, I love the little lip that the ZL and the RL button have here, because it just feels really nice when you're holding it and your fingers can just rest on that lip, and it feels fantastic. And I think we've got a lot more to come from the Lite version of this Switch, because like I've said, new colour coming out early November. I suspect there'll be plenty more colours and plenty more variants released, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this brings. So there we go, the Switch Lite is a must. I really love it. There's very, very little disadvantage, but I guess it depends on what you want it for. Bear in mind the kinds of games that you want to play, make sure that it is compatible, and make sure your game doesn't rely on motion controls. If you're new here, thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like rating and hit that subscribe button, and I will be back on Monday with more videos, but we got streams right here and on Mix It over the weekend, but I'm gonna leave it there. My name is Gemma, guys. Take care, have a great day, see you soon.